this is Dominic, wedding DJ.
And this is Serena, wedding planner.
And together we are the Wedding Duo. We are here to talk all things weddings.
Planning a wedding can be stressful, but we are here to help.
So before you say, that's it, we're going to Vegas, don't go to Vegas.
Let's have some fun.
Join us as we answer your wedding questions and help navigate planning one of the biggest days of your life with the Wedding Duo. Hey, and welcome back, everyone, to our 13th episode.
It is episode 13.
Episode of our Wedding Duo podcast.
So excited. We made it this far, right? They say that like the average podcast doesn't make it past 10 episodes. So like we are well on our way.
I always, you know what I always say? I never say 13. I always say a baker's dozen. We've made it to a baker's dozen.
So exciting.
Why I say it that way, I don't know really, but.
Well, it's true.
And this was my number when I played soccer. People say 13. Isn't that an unlucky number? I'm like, for the other team. Yeah.
Oh, touche.
One of my boys, I bet one of our boys, I'm going to have him wear 13. I'll be like,
oh, he means our sons.
Passing on the legacy.
He's encouraged, more than encouraged the boys to play soccer because
they have enjoyed it. I would not
he loves it so much.
But to see your offspring enjoy the sport that you've had a lifelong love for. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I can't even tell you how good for the soul that is.
If you're watching on YouTube, you probably see him getting teary-eyed right about now.
I'm not. We're talking about our boys and our little ones.
Well,
anyway,
beyond that, we are going to talk about some fun stuff today, but also we're going to answer some questions. So that's the whole premise of today's episode is answering commonly asked questions. So we went through like our TikTok feed and Instagram, and we found some of the questions that we get a lot, like repeated, and we answer them a lot of times on our lives, but we wanted to have a podcast dedicated to the answers to those questions.
Well, not just that. I mean, we have our own clients that we meet with initially when they're still looking to hire us, and then through the planning process, and the questions that just come up often that a lot of you out there, if you're engaged, may have already had in the back of your mind, or you're like, ooh, that's a good one. I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, I should maybe ask that.
Because they say, I know there's the things I don't know and the things I know, and then there's things I don't know that I don't know. And you're like, yeah, there's pick your industry. There's those questions. You're like, I didn't even think to ask that question.
Exactly. And that's why we're here, is to help. You know, if you've been listening to our podcast, if you've followed us on social media, that is the whole reason we do this, is to create a community of engaged couples where we can really help guide you. Whether you're DIYing the whole thing or you've got wall-to-wall professionals, we're here to help. So let's start with our first question.
We're professionals, aren't we?
We are?
Yeah.
Most of the time.
That's right. I didn't say we were professional. So we're professionals. Like we are.
We try.
We do this for a living, full time, for a long time.
Yes, we do.
So we have 10 questions.
We do. And I have them written
in no particular order, by the way. This is not like this is the most common or least common. It's just 10 of the very common questions we get asked.
Exactly. And so the first one is, what are some fun or unique ways to engage your guests? And I think what they're getting at is like, how do you keep their attention? Do we do games? You know, like what are the ways to like have some fun other than the traditional just dancing, drinking, that kind of a thing?
Which is a great question, because most people, I mean, it's about the two of you, but you're concerned about your guest experience, right? You want them to be engaged, like she said, but also have fun to make your event memorable, right?
Exactly.
One thing is the pace, the timeline, right? Because there's times during the night when it can just drag on, and the guests start to go like, hey, what's happening next, right? So that's one thing. Have a good timeline. Try to like be cognizant that if you're outside doing sunset shots and everyone is inside waiting and waiting and waiting, 20 minutes goes by really fast for you. It can drag after everyone's already finished their food if you're inside.
Absolutely. Or if they haven't gotten their food yet and they're waiting for food, that is an even longer wait for most people. So he's absolutely right. So you're going to want to be cognizant of time for your guests' experience. But the other thing is that depending on the type of couple you are, maybe you're really fun and silly. And so you have it in your head, you want to do some of these fun, silly things, right? But you could also be the opposite of that. So just take what we say with a grain of salt, right? Like maybe you think it is too game showy, some of this stuff, then don't do it. That's absolutely your prerogative.
But one of the other questions we have on here addresses those of you that are like, we are not the center of attention type. So again, we see all types of couples. So this would be one. The usual stuff is the bouquet and the garter and the anniversary dance. And the reason I'd list that one there as well is because bouquet focuses on the single ladies. The garter tends to focus on the single guys. And then the anniversary dance focuses on your guests that are married. And it is a great way to kind of hit all of the people involved.
Exactly. And then the other thing that's popular, and we've done a YouTube episode where we did this, is the shoe game, right? So those are the really like common things. And the shoe game is where you sit back to back, you have each one of your shoes, you get asked questions about your relationship, and it is who is the most, affectionate. And then you raise a shoe, whether you think it's yourself or your spouse. So that's a lot of fun. And the reason we like that one too is because, again, it showcases your relationship. It's based on the two of you and you're at your wedding. So it's nice to kind of keep it in that wheelhouse.
Yeah. And some people may know you as a couple, but there's going to be a lot of people that knew you when you were younger, whether it's your family or cousins or friends. And they know you, but they don't know him or her, your significant other. And and they may not know you as a couple. So it's really fun to see. And when we did the shoe game, sometimes you realize, I don't know you that well.
No. And we've been together 10 years and we got probably 60% wrong.
But I think in my head, I could have probably predicted the questions that would have been like, well, I also know that I think one thing and you think something else. So but it's really fun to see the couples kind of go down this path.
Yeah. And I was going to say, for us, it's really more about like being competitive and thinking we're better at something than the other person.
Who's more competitive? I put up my shoe and she put up her shoe.
Yeah.
And I know that about us. So it's kind of fun. But it is really cute.
The other things that we have suggested, we've done a whole TikTok thing on this, is if you're doing assigned tables, like table 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, you can not use numbers necessarily to assign those tables. You can do maybe your favorite musicals or your favorite movies. And then what do you do with those tables?
Yeah. And usually they're not assigned, like you were saying, assigned seating. People just table their numbers usually, right?
Number their tables, not table their numbers.
Both of those things.
Backwards.
But I flip that around. But like even if you're like, oh, we're not assigning seats, like you can still have table numbers. And like she said, in lieu of that, have it named after something you love. And the great part is you can take it a step further and say, well, that table gets released when they hear a song from the musical soundtrack or a song from the movie itself, whether, the Harry Potter theme plays from the Harry Potter table gets to go to the buffet, Star Wars. If you do musicals, you can have Jersey Boys, you can have Les Mis, Hamilton, Greatest Showman, Moulin Rouge, like whatever. There's
so many options.
Yeah, or movies. Movies is a fantastic one. Maybe Your First Date is one of those movies. You can do songs, like classic songs. And When a Man Loves a Woman table, when that song plays, that table goes. At Last, Wonderful Tonight, Beautiful Crazy, whatever the song is that maybe you love.
Just love songs in general.
Love songs.
Absolutely. So,
good.
No, that's okay. I was going to say, it's just really fun. You need to have a good MC and somebody kind of watching just to make sure that people are aware when it's their time to go. But it can be a really great way to engage your guests. The other thing that we see that's really, it sounds kind of silly, but it's actually kind of neat, is putting together some type of scavenger hunt. And we don't mean like going around looking for, things, actual objects, but putting together a list. And maybe one of the things is find one of the groom's high school football teammates, right? So what this does is it actually makes the people go and talk to people they wouldn't normally talk to, right? Like they start to mingle with people outside of their comfort zone. And so that can be a lot of fun as well.
Yeah. Or maybe the bride was on a softball team or a soccer team as well. Or maybe they were in a sorority or fraternity. You could find out what was the sorority or who was in, find one of the sorority girls or whatever.
And you can have other questions too,
Girl
right?
Scouts. What if she was in Girl Scouts?
You could find one of her
somebody you probably has known for a long time. But
absolutely. So that's just one suggestion too. And we know that, again, as I mentioned earlier, if you're not into doing any type of games, that is absolutely your place too. Like a lot of people don't want to do these types of things, but some people really want to have other events going on to engage their crowd. So we're going to move on to the next question.
Well, let's do the other one that I mentioned. Can we do that one next?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the beauty of these ones, like with the table things, is that the shoe game, the bouquet, garter, they center around the couple, right? But if you are the person that says, because this question comes up a lot, neither of us like the spotlight. Neither of us are these center of attention types. So that's why the table things are kind of fun, because that just kind of happens as the event is going on, as opposed to shine a light on the bride and groom, sit them down in the middle of the dance floor, give them the shoes, and do the shoe game. If that's fine for you, that's great. But if you're like, oh my gosh, the hair on the back of my neck stands up, my anxiety goes through the roof, just the thought of doing that, then these are some of the things that maybe you would like to do.
So the question is, we don't like being the center of attention. How do we navigate this, right? And so exactly what he said is, what we're going to be discussing. So there are moments, I'm just going to have you wrap your head around this, where you're just going to have to avoid, those feelings, there's no way to avoid it, right?
It is your wedding day.
Yes.
And it revolves around the two of you. It's hard not to be in the center of attention, but there's little things you can do for sure.
Absolutely. And so the points that this happens usually are obviously at the altar. So that's a big one for a lot of people, but you can shorten your ceremony, have it, not be long, and that sometimes helps with that. Maybe having a larger group up there with you, sometimes that's helpful than just the two of you standing there. Mm-hmm. There's, comfort in numbers there. The next point would be your introduction. So after you've said I do, there's been cocktail hour, you're going to be introduced into the room. And a lot of times we give these suggestions of being this big, over the top, like
Sunday.
Yeah, like sports arena, rip the roof off, right?
Yeah.
But that does not have to happen either, right?
I love it. I love doing that.
Yes,
and it definitely
we do
sets
enjoy
the stage
that.
for you kind of prime the crowd for like, oh, it's going to be a good night. If you have a high energy wedding party, all that stuff is great. But again, if you're like, that's just not us, right? Mm-hmm. Because if we haven't said it yet, your wedding day is very personal. It revolves around you and your significant other and how the two of you are, right? So don't do what everybody else is trying to talk you into doing if it doesn't suit you. So they will have already seen you at the altar, the couple.
So it's not like you're a surprise at this point.
It's not like they don't know what you're wearing or whatever. The dress has already been revealed, all that stuff. So you can just come in during cocktail hour to nothing. Just kind of join your crowd. They've already seen you and just be like, hey, Aunt Betty's here with Uncle Joe, and hug it out. Or you can just say, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a round of applause for our guest of honor. Yay, golf clap.
And you walk in, right.
Subtle, right? So that can be one part that you don't have to have the big introduction, right? So
absolutely,
that's a big one to go jump over.
We're not going to do that. Yeah. And so then the next point are the dances, like the spotlight dances, right? So obviously your first dance, you probably still want to do a first dance. And a lot of times people will be like, can we just have it be like 30 seconds? Well, keep in mind that 30 seconds is really fast and you'll have barely gotten out there and danced before you have to come back. And then your photographer and your videographer may not have gotten a chance to get photos. So try to do 2 minutes if you can. But that's one of the ways to help this is to shorten the lengths of the songs that you're going to dance to.
And 2 minutes is always what I suggest too. That's because that way you'll get to somewhere in there. Hopefully you get to the chorus, past the chorus. And if it goes into like a little instrumental part at like 2:07, and you can practice in your kitchen and tell your DJ, hey, we don't want the full song. It's 4.5 minutes long. That's really long. Or not. Like if it's like, no, it's our first dance. Let's just take the whole thing in. So I'm not trying to talk anybody out of like, oh, should we shorten it? It's 3:52. Like, no. But if you do want to shorten it, or you don't want to be out there in front of everybody the whole time, try to get a good 2 minutes, whether it's somewhere between 1:50 and 2:10. After the chorus, it goes into a guitar solo or an instrumental part. That's a perfect spot for the DJ to say, ladies and gentlemen, are newlyweds, and fade it out. And you're like, yay. And then you can get the hell out of there.
Right. And the other thing,
get me the hell out of here.
So that's the first dance. The other one is parent dances. And a lot of times we hear that like the parents are also, not so much into being in the spotlight. Right. So they're like, we don't really want to be out there either. Something you can do here is combine the dances. So you can dance with dad while he dances with mom. Then maybe there's more, again, comfort in having multiple couples out on the dance floor rather than just the two of you.
You're implying that it's only brides listening.
Well, the grooms, you mean I referenced the brides first? Yes. No, I don't think that. But I've seen our analytics and there are a lot of brides listening as opposed to grooms.
Oh, we are definitely bride heavy on our crew.
Yeah. So the rule about shortening the song works here as well. But the other thing you can do, like I mentioned, is have that combined dance. So let's move on then.
Wait, one other thing too, if you don't pick up a spot in the song, I always tell if traditionally it's the father of the bride or the mother of the groom. And during dinner, I go around and say, hey, this is when your dance is coming up. They're doing their first dance. And then I'll invite you out to dance with your daughter or whatever. And I'll say, it's about a 4.5-minute song. And they're like, oh, like, you want the whole thing? And they go, no. So I said, well, I'll shoot for 2 minutes. But if you're ready before then or whatever, as you're dancing with your dad or your mom or whomever you're dancing with, come around, give your DJ kind of a nod like, yep, okay, we're ready. And then I'll try to find a spot in the song to fade it out. Because sometimes they don't want 2 minutes, but they don't want 4.5. So I go, well, when you're ready, I'll read your body language. But if you're both like not really saying anything, they start to kind of
make it clear.
Yeah. So look at your DJ, give him a nod and tell him we don't want the whole song, but I'll nod it out. I'll give you a nod.
Yeah, that's a great option. So our next question number 3 is how much do wedding DJs / wedding planners cost? Like, how much are you going to pay for our services? And the reason we wanted to address this question is not because we're going to give you a concrete answer, because we're not, because it's too hard for us to say here in San Antonio in a very specific area, to have that be a blanket statement for other vendors across the board, right?
Yeah, and that's just here. It's hard to make a statement. So depending on where you are in the world or what your venue is, maybe you've got a huge budget or maybe you don't. So
right. But I'm saying too, like for us to say what other businesses should price themselves at. We're going to talk a little bit just about like the range of cost and what you can get the value of spending a little more money, right? So for the planner side of things, I'll just speak for myself. There's usually a kind of 2 different categories, and this will affect the budget. There's wedding planning, which usually is more full service, meaning that they start right when you hire them. They can go look at venues with you. If you haven't even selected a venue, they can help you with the vendor search. They can help with decor and the floor plan. I mean, all the pieces, they're going to be there to put those together. That is going to cost you significantly more than if you're looking at a coordinator. And generally the coordinator comes in, and I've mentioned this before on previous podcasts, but they come in about a month out and they're going to help with the logistics. They're going to do timeline. They're going to send out vendor communication, make sure everybody's timing is correct, do your rehearsal, day of, and all of that. That's going to be less expensive. Obviously, there's less work involved. Now, when we talk about a range of costs for like services like this, there is something to be said that you get what you pay for. In all honesty, experience goes a long way. And those of us that have been doing this a long time, that's where the value is, right? Like the more budget you put towards something like full scale planning, you're going to get a lot more out of it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
And there's going to be a lot of things you're going to find that say, oh, here's what percentage of your budget should go towards this category and this category and this category. And again, even that is very non-specific. Some people say, I don't care what we have to eat. They can have peanut butter and jelly. I want to get to the dance floor because my family are dancers. Yes. I just want to dance. I want to have a good party. Other people want this 3-course plated meal because they're foodies, or that's what they really want. That's what they're into. They're not really dancers or partiers. They want to sit down and have an elegant meal and just talk with everybody during dinner. So of course, put more money toward that or put more money toward this. Other people really have a floral image, and that can be a bigger part of your budget. Other people, what my couple are for this weekend, they made their own wine. They really like wine, and they've made the wine that's going to be on the table. That's fantastic. But they're obviously into wine, so they're going to put more of the budget toward the bar, or maybe, so it really just depends on what is it that you are interested in spending your budget on.
So for the wedding DJ portion, what do we usually talk about as far as like budgetary costs, and what do you expect to see?
So very similar to what she had said, time, like how sometimes I'm reception only because they got married in the church. I'm usually not in the church, bringing them down the aisle to LMFAO, bring in the groom.
Not usually, they don't like that.
I'm usually on the outside looking in like, what's going on? What's going on in the church? So if I'm only doing reception, there's a good chance there's going to be several hours less sometimes. But if I am doing the ceremony, you probably will need a little bit more time, but you also need more equipment. So because usually people think of the music, but they don't think of the microphones, which is something else that I provide at the ceremony.
So those are the 2 factors for the DJ service is how much time do you need us for? And then what equipment do we need to bring?
It's very common for DJs to have lighting as well. Maybe you wanted some lighting. So that's something else that people either have no interest in, or is I'm like, oh yeah, I really wanted some lighting. That oftentimes falls with a DJ.
It does. Absolutely.
It does with us anyway.
And one final thing to mention about any of your vendors or specifically our categories is that if you find someone and it's like really inexpensive, right? That doesn't mean necessarily, I'm not going to say that that person isn't valuable or good at their job. I would just tread lightly, like make sure that you talk to this person in person, the communication is there, maybe ask them why they are less. I mean, honestly, because if they maybe just moved from out of state and so they're trying to get established and that's why their prices are lower, maybe that's a great find. If they can't answer that question for you though, that might be a little bit of a red flag. So we're just going to put that out there. And again, we don't want to, talk specifics because we're in one location and we price ourselves where we feel comfortable pricing ourselves.
And you can always look at reviews. You can always look at the website. You can always, if they have a website. But yeah, it's really, I could be the best DJ ever and be a horrible business person and just bad communicator. And you're going to be a little anxious about that. I mean, which is no different than you can be a great plumber and not know how to run a business, or a great dentist and not know how to. So it's not unique to our industry, but it's just a thing. It's great if they can have the total package where they're just a well-oiled machine like us, right?
Yes.
Well, we're pretty good at all that stuff, but it's because we really take it seriously because it's a huge day in your life. And that's the people you want that really care about your day.
Right. And so let's move on to the next question, which is, this is number 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes. How many songs do we need for the ceremony? So this can be a quick answer, honestly. So I'm going to let you go on this one.
I always say, let's start with 3. 3 is the number to which you will count. It's a little Monty Python reference there.
Oh, wow.
4 is right out. It was the throwing of the holy hand grenade.
Okay.
For those of you that are Monty Python out there.
I think there's a small percentage who even know what that is.
But so start with 3. And the reason is, it's a great place to start because you have 1 for the wedding party and the parents or anybody else that's going down the aisle. Traditionally, the bride will have her own song. And then after the ceremony, when you say your I do's, after your I do's, there's what's called the recessional to come off of the altar. You can do more than that. And what are the reasons why you would have to have more, or you would want to have more? Go.
Right. So if you have a really long walk, or you have a lot of people processing, meaning our aunts and uncles processing and grandparents,
sponsors,
and everybody, la-di-da-di, everybody.
20 couples in your wedding party. Yes. And yes, we have had that.
We absolutely have.
That's big, but.
So the other thing is, how long is the walk? And we mean from the doors down the path, down the stairs, around the hill, then you get to the back of the aisle. That's a little bit excessive, but if you have that really long walk, you can add an additional song. So maybe you have 1 for parents, grandparents, and then 1 for the wedding party, and then 1 for the bride, and then a recessional. That would be 4.
And the opposite of that is if it's a really short walk, because we have one in town it's a very cute little chapel, but they start 10 paces from the altar,
very quick.
So if you have 1 for the parents, 1 for the groomsmen, 1 for the bridesmaids, you don't get much of the song, because by the time you start the song and it's just the 2 parents and they're taking their seats already, we haven't even gotten to the chorus and I'm already fading that song out.
Yeah.
So you spent all this time picking that song for the parents and it's over before it begins. And so it gets kind of choppy. So that in that case, less is better.
Absolutely. Less is more.
Less is more,
as they say. The next question will be, this is a big one, right? Because sometimes we have couples that come to us just for planning. And so they'll ask me, well, I'm thinking about having a DJ versus a band, right? And of course you want a DJ, right?
Of course you want a DJ.
No, that's not true. I have done weddings with bands and they can be fantastic. They really can. But there's some things you want to keep in mind. And these things are specific to what the DJ brings versus what the band brings. Go.
Yeah, and go. I'm a music lover and I love going to see a live band, whether it's like somebody that you went and bought a ticket to and there was like this giant stadium, or somebody you see at the local bar and grill that's just there every Thursday night, right? But keep in mind, the budget is going to be one thing. DJ is just one person, generally. A band can be up to 5 to 7 people. And how much space do they need? Because sometimes I've been in rooms, it is really tight. And I am in the little corner and I'm like, I barely have room for my speaker stands. So if there was a drummer, they would take up the entire space. And what about the guitarist and the lead singer or whatever else, right? So keep in mind how much space you have. Keep in mind the budget. But just in general of what we bring to the party is bands take break. And again, I'm not trying to hate on a band. This is just things that weddings versus bands. Bands will take a break. It's like, what are you doing during the break? It's going to be complete silence. Do they provide background music? Does the venue maybe have something? As a DJ, I hate silence. I'm not a fan. So I'll have music playing during dinner, during cocktail hour. The other thing is the emceeing side of things. A lot of times the band, they do their songs. Maybe they introduce their next song, but they don't MC the event, right? They're not going to be like, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to start the buffet. Hey, make sure you sign the guest book, whatever else is happening over the course of the night.
Those important announcements that you want made, right?
Now, there are wedding bands out there in the world, and they focus on weddings.
Yes.
Sometimes they have, first of all, they'll be able to pick up they'll have music playing during their breaks. That's like easy. But they also understand the flow of the wedding. They understand the emceeing part of the side of things. And they'll oftentimes have multiple singers, maybe 2 genders, because if you walk up to a band that's 4 dudes and say, hey, can you play Beyonce? They're like, does it look like I play Beyonce? We are a country band. We play country songs. You're like, okay, but like what? There's people here that don't like country music. So the variety is one last thing I'll mention. I can play any song that was ever written by any artist or any cover or anything. I can either find it or get it, but usually we'll have had this conversation before. And again, I'm not trying to hate on bands, but if it's a wedding band, they have 2 singers, they're going to have those hits that just work well with the crowd. But still, it's still going to be limited on what they can do. And it'll be their rendition, which is sometimes great, but it's not the original. And sometimes people want the original stuff. So
absolutely. So those are definitely some things to think about. And as I mentioned at the beginning,
I'm sorry, sorry, everyone out there in a band that's like, shut up, DJ.
I've done weddings with bands that were spectacular, but to his point, they were wedding bands. They were hired and they knew they were going in, what they're going into, right? So they can cater to that crowd. All right. Our next question is, what if we have an uneven number of people in our wedding party?
Dun, dun, dun.
Oh my gosh.
This comes up quite a bit. We did a TikTok on this recently where it's like, what does it mean if it's just the 2 of you up there? Maybe you've been together so long you don't have any friends. What if it's uneven? Like, well, maybe you don't care. Maybe you have no structure. Maybe you're like that kind of person. I don't care.
Oh, you're talking about the TikTok we did?
Or maybe your bridesmaid pissed you off on the bachelor party and you kicked her out last minute. I was like,
okay, so if that's you, right, and you have an uneven wedding party now because you kicked out your bridesmaid. No, I'm just kidding. This is what we usually recommend. So a lot of people get nervous, like, well, how are we going to pair the people up to go down the aisle, for the ceremony? First of all, you don't have to do pairs. A lot of times we will do, we'll start with the officiate if the officiate is walking down, and then we'll do the groom. Maybe he's walking with his mom or both moms or both his parents. And then just like ducks in a row, like we like to say, the groomsman will go out right behind him, right? Mm-hmm. And then we'll have the bridesmaids go out. And sometimes this is nice because it really showcases each individual. Something to keep in mind, if you have stairs or there's uneven ground, I still would recommend you pair people up. And if you have an uneven group, it is okay to do 3 people, right? Or have an usher.
A guy with 2 girls or vice versa.
You utilize them for like parents just to make sure someone can hold arms.
Yeah. And when she says even ground, like, is it cobblestone?
Yeah.
Is it high potential for tripping? Is it up a hill or something? And just having that arm to hold on to. And because ladies, sometimes your shoes are not compatible with the terrain that you're walking on.
But now if we go into introductions, that's the other place that people get nervous about it because they're like, we have, 5 guys and 7 girls. How are we going to do introductions? So how do they do that?
Well, again, bring them in individually. I love doing that. Let's bring out the ladies, bring out the bridesmaids first, or even the bridesmaids. Maybe there's a bridesman or a man of honor. And then same thing. There might be a girl or female on the groom side, a groom's girl or whatever we call a groom woman. But it's great. You can have a very woman-centric song to bring out the girls, and then one for the guys to come out to, and then the couple comes out to a third song. It's really simple. It's not that hard to do.
Absolutely. So don't stress over that. We've got answers.
Yeah. Kick your girlfriend out. If she upset you, you know what? You're off the team. Kick her out.
Okay. So our next question is, how do we honor those that have passed at our wedding? And we get this question a lot, like more than I want to, because honestly, because it's so sad. It's like, we know that planning a wedding is hard in the first place, but to plan a wedding when you've lost, say, like a parent, especially, is tough, right? Because there are spots where you feel they should be there. And then especially on wedding day. So some of the things that we've seen that are especially, I think appropriate are doing some sort of moment of silence or dedication to those people during the ceremony. Mm-hmm. Either have your, officiate say something, have something prepared where everyone, has a moment of silence, and then they read the names or the name, whoever it is. That can also be accompanied by a seat that is saved for that individual. And sometimes I'll have my couples will put a photo or maybe like a hat or boots I've had them do on that seat, and that will hold the place for that person.
I've seen the groom, this was probably a month and a half ago. He walked down the aisle with a single red rose and put it on the first chair that would have been where his mom would have sat, because his mom had passed away. And that's a beautiful sentiment. It's very simple. It's very, it's very powerful, yet just simple. It's an easy thing to add in.
Yes.
But the other thing that we see quite often, that's definitely ceremony stuff, but people do a memorial table all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's really pretty to have a couple candles, some pictures, some photos of them, some significant stuff. Because you had, in that event, I DJ'd that event with you. We took the boots and the hat from Dad and brought them into the
and we saved a similar spot at a reception table, and we put a candle at the place setting and had that burning for the reception.
You know what else they did that night that I'd never seen before was his best friend. This was the father of the bride, correct? Mm-hmm. His best friend gave a toast at one point, and he opened a beer that was his brand and said, "This one's for him." And he set it on the sweetheart table. He said, "Don't anybody drink it." I'm like, "Yes, don't anybody drink it." But that was kind of cute. Maybe he enjoyed his beer. It was kind of a nice way to say, like, "Oh yeah, he always did have a beer around whenever that was at the table." People sometimes have done a significant dance too for that person. Because if it is, let's say, father of the bride, that's usually somebody who would have a dance later, right? So I would just say it could be a very heavy moment. It can be very cathartic, as you always like to say.
I do.
And you don't want to not pay homage to this person that was so special to you. But at the same time, even them, if I was talking to my kids and say like, "Oh, I'm not going to make it to the wedding. I don't want to ruin your day. I don't want you to be sad the whole night.
Right.
I want you to have a great party." But so have your moment, have a good cry, whatever, whether it's at the ceremony or you do the dance with your brother or your uncle or your grandpa. Have the dance. Maybe you can pick a song that was special to him or an artist that he loved that maybe you knew. And this could be for mom either, or a sibling. We've had siblings that have passed away as well.
Right. And if you feel like that's too much, like you're not going to be able to make it through and be the center of attention during this dance, another thing you can do is just dedicate a song to this person, like later in the night, like during dancing. And then everyone slow dances to the song. And so then you don't feel so much pressure to be out there and have everybody looking at you. But those are just some suggestions, stuff we've seen. We do understand, again, it is difficult to not only plan the event, but then go forward with the event without those people there.
And it doesn't have to be a sad song either. Maybe he loved Bon Jovi.
Absolutely.
And you play like Living on a Prayer or whatever. Like you have a big song where like, you know what, this one's going out to, the father of the bride. He was a huge Bon Jovi fan. Let's all sing this one at the top of the line. So you have that moment where you're screaming at the top of your lungs, singing the song that he loved.
Yes.
And it's not a sad moment, but it's a happy, still emotional, but still it doesn't need to be so heavy and sad. So yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Those are some ideas.
So the next question is, how do we get the party going? So we're going to transition from what we were just talking about to how do people want to know this a lot of times, like, how do we get the party going and then like keep the party going, right? Like, so what are some of your tips, tricks for doing so?
So there's a few things out there that a DJ will always be challenged with. And sometimes for me, it's always like, if it's still daylight out, I'm like, it's really bright in here. People are like cockroaches. It needs to be dark or they scatter. The lights come on, people are, So I always try to dim the lights once we open the dance floor, right? If you can, close the shades, but if it's still daylight out, I understand that I may burn a few songs before until Mother Nature help cooperate and say, like, can you put the sun down as well? We're trying to get the party going here. But those are things that you can't always control. But what I like to do is, let's say you do your first dance and then maybe the parent dances, whatever. And then the DJ is just supposed to say, dance floor is open and play a fast one. And you want to get people on the dance floor. So you want that like really epic, big hitting song. But what happens is people are looking around. They're like, oh, I'm not going out first. Who's going out first? And you end up, as a DJ, there have been nights I've wasted 3 or 4 good songs. Like, come on, get on the dance floor.
Because people aren't ready. They're not drunk enough yet.
They're not drunk enough. And you don't want to go right to the club because there's 4 generations there. I try to include everybody in that early one. Because if you get people dancing early, they'll stick around. If you go straight to the club, your parents and the upper generations are going to be like, well, I guess we're not going to get to dance tonight. Let's grab some cake and get out of here. And then your crowd thins out and you never quite hit that stride.
Yes.
So variety is great. Timeless songs that multiple generations know are great. But the way I open the dance floor is after we finish those other dances, I always say, ladies and gentlemen, our newlyweds would love to share a slow song with everybody. So if you're here with your sweetheart, come on onto the dance floor. And I like to use a really timeless song, Can't Help Falling in Love, Wonderful Tonight, At Last, Across My Heart, if you're a country fan, George Strait, Tennessee Whiskey. It's an old song that was redone by Mr. Stapleton. Those are great songs because people recognize it. And even your grumpy uncle is sitting there like, I'm not dancing. All of a sudden, wise men say, and he's like, nah, come on, we're all gussied up. Let's go out. Because people will come out with very little effort on my part for a slow song. So what happens is you get everybody on the dance floor. You get great pictures because nobody's left yet. Sometimes the photographers will have the couple like shimmy, shimmy, Cocoa Puff to the front. So the picture of them sitting there with all their guests on the dance floor.
Right.
And now they're all on the dance floor. And then at the end of that song, I say, dance floor's open. And I play a fast one. And the people that want to dance are out there with the other people that want to dance. The people that don't want to dance are like, I ain't trapped on the dance floor. And I'm like, oh, you fell right into my trap.
That is the master plan.
And you go right into it. And oh my gosh, it works so well. I mean, I do that almost every event.
It's gold. It's DJ gold right there.
It's DJ genius. Is what it is.
So our next question is, can we pick our own music? And what this question means is, if you're going to your DJ or you're going to hire a DJ, do you get a say in what is played? And not necessarily like your first dance or walking down the aisle, because of course you're going to pick those songs, but like the dance music, right? Like, do you get a say in the dance music that is played?
Well, I would say, your family and friends and yourselves, each other, better than anybody else.
Right.
If you're really into music, of course, send your DJ list. I mean, there have been times where I'm looking at the timeline. We have maybe 2.5 hours to dance, and I get a 9-hour playlist on Spotify or Apple Music or
mindful,
Amazon or whatever it is. Yeah. So keep in mind, because there's nights where I'm like, okay, you sent me 7 songs from Harry Styles. I'm not going to play 7 songs from one artist. There's a good chance, unless you tell me to. So I'm going to grab the one that I think works best, but that might not be the one that you really wanted to hear if you had to pick one. So scrub your list.
Yes.
Get it down to the ones you really want to hear. But it's great to include, like I said, other generations, because if you have all just gangsta hardcore rap that you listen to, that's great. And we can do a section of that, but you can't do that all night. I suggest, that's just my opinion. I think you would have a better party and more people would dance if you cast a bigger net outside of just what you two like to hear.
Right. Absolutely. And so the thing to do, if we have any say in what you do, is to really, like you said, scrub your list, give your must plays, and then also give a do not playlist. So let us know if there's artists or specific songs you really don't want to hear. Maybe you don't want any line dances. Maybe you don't want any 70s music or whatever it is, right? Like that can be really helpful too. But if you have those, songs that were definitely important to like you and your girls or you and your guys, put those on that must playlist so that we make sure we get to them. So our next question, and we've got 2 more, we're almost there. Do we need to dance to the full song? And I think we kind of already answered this, but we'll go over it again. So this kind of goes along with like not wanting to be out on the dance floor with the spotlight on the two of you for too long. So of course you can shorten the song. You don't need to necessarily shorten the song beforehand and like edit it or anything like that. Because we've gotten that question before too. Like, do you want to edit the song? We don't need to do that. But the DJ has the ability to fade it out at a certain point, like we mentioned before, around that 2-minute mark, if you can make it to that point, and then, move on to the next dance or the next activity.
And I always tell them too, especially with if like I'll ask my bride, are you a daddy's girl? And she's like, oh yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Or me and my dad aren't close. That's a great reason maybe shorten the song. You want to have the dance, but you're not really close. But if you say you're a daddy's girl and they say, yeah, you can shorten the song, but I'm looking out there and I see the body language. I see the conversation, the hugs, the crying. I'm like, I'm not ruining this moment.
I'm not going to be the one. Right? Yeah.
Because someday I'm going to dance with our daughter and I will tell the DJ, maybe if you touch that volume, I will break your finger, dude. I want that full. I don't care if it's a 12. We're going to pick Freebird.
What if she doesn't want to?
No. She will want to dance with me.
Of course she will. But what I was going to say is, what if she doesn't want to dance the full song? Will you?
She being the bride, I would honor that.
Oh, good. That's the right answer.
I'll be like, come on. She'll try to walk away and I'll be like pulling her back. Like, no. Because we can dance more later. You get more of the dance, but that one particular dance, yes. I don't.
You'd be like, please let me have it. Yeah.
She'll be like, that's a 7-minute song, Dad. I go, come on. I want to dance with you for 7 minutes.
That's so cute.
No, I'm always very cognizant of the guest as well. So they don't want to sit there and watch us dance for that one. But 4.5 minutes, I've had plenty of dads that are like, I want the full song. And I go,
yep.
Roger that.
Absolutely. So the last question, and this is kind of a big question, we save for last, is how do you hire a DJ? Like, how do you go about selecting the best entertainer for your wedding? And we often give kind of 3 tips, right? And one of the first ones is, we kind of mentioned this previously, but check reviews and speak to the person in person, right? Like, make sure, not in person necessarily, like face to face, but over the phone or through Zoom, know who you're talking to and who you're dealing with. It's interesting because, like you always like to say, hiring a DJ is a very personality-based decision. It's not like picking out flowers where it's an object. It's a person, and their personality is what you're hiring, right? So you want to kind of know what you're getting.
And the photographer and the videographer have a portfolio. You can see their work, right? Caterers and the bakers, you can taste the cake. You can have a tasting. Mm-hmm. Most of the caterers have a tasting. So it's very tangible, right? But the DJ, you're like, hi, I'm a DJ. You're like, okay,
so what are you going to do? Press play?
Yeah. The other guy, right? So yeah, like she was saying, make sure the person, because if you call, they may have a guy that takes the calls or a girl that takes the calls who may or may not be the person that you'll be working with on your wedding day. So that's a great question to ask, because we do that. Once I'm booked, if I'm taking the first call, I still talk with them about what are you looking for? What's the venue? What do you need?
Right.
But then I'm more than happy to have you talk directly with the person that you'd be working with if they want to. Some people are like, oh, no, I need a DJ. I'm not really concerned. Do they have a pulse? Send them out. I'm like, okay. But if you want to, ask that question, because there are companies that their business model is you don't get to meet them. I'll figure out who you're going to get once the scheduling comes. I mean, it's like,
right.
And I don't know. I mean, I'm such a big fan of music, and that person is such a major player. I mean, obviously I'm a DJ, so what else would I say? But people don't appreciate how much havoc a bad DJ can have on your event.
This is true.
You hear the stories. He or she got drunk. He forgot our name. He didn't have our first dance. He was hitting on bridesmaids over the microphone. I'm like, yikes. Oh my God, who are these people?
Yeah. So the second thing is to, like I mentioned, check reviews, check their kind of like online reputation. And then the communication piece, like, are they getting back to you, right? Are they answering your questions? And then it kind of falls in this category too, is do they ask you what is important to you? Like, do they allow you to pick your own music? Do they have some sort of planner where you can fill it out and tell them your significant songs and your do not playlist? Like, how involved are they letting you be in your own planning of your wedding?
And this kind of goes in. So there's 2 types of DJs in the world. There's usually your wedding DJ and there's a club DJ. And there are different skill sets involved. They both revolve around music. But again, wedding DJ, we know there's 4 generations. We usually MC. A lot of times you get the club DJ, they may or may not MC. And they might have their music. They're like, this is the stuff that I beat mix. That sounds good. That's the stuff I'm going to play out. You don't get to pick any of your songs, or you can give me 5 or 6 songs. But these are questions to ask. And again, I'm not saying it won't be a good event. Maybe that's what you want. Maybe you want that club vibe. And a wedding DJ isn't what you're looking for. But good question to ask. Do you MC? Will you be the person that's going to be there? Do I get some say in my own music? But the main thing across all vendors is, do they care, right? Like, This is a big day. This is a personal day. It might be the biggest day in a lot of people, in a lot of our couples' lives. This is the biggest day of their life so far. Maybe you've graduated. Maybe you've already had a kid or something. But this is a big day. So if you get the thing, do they really care about you? Is it just a business? Are you just turnkey for them? Are they not invested in you and your significant other and your family on this huge day? And that oftentimes will come out in a conversation. Am I right?
Absolutely. And you can do both. I mean, you can run a successful business and still care about your couples. Absolutely. So, I mean,
we do.
Absolutely. And that's important for you to get a feel for right off the bat, because you're making an investment. This is a huge day. That is something that you want to be mindful of across the board. So I hope you enjoyed our episode today. That was a lot of fun. We got to answer some really great questions. If you guys are looking for more guidance, more help as far as it goes with like music or wedding planning, you can visit our website, theweddingduo.co. We have virtual planning sessions there. You can visit our shop where we have some downloadable forms, both a music planner and a wedding planner that can help guide you, especially if you're DIY. But thank you so much for following us. Check us out on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere. We really love you all. It is such a spectacular thing to have you listen.
We love what we do.
And so what do we always say?
So as I alluded to earlier, your wedding day is a very personal day. So don't let anybody talk you into something you don't want to do or talk you out of something you have your heart set on. Who cares what your crazy cousin did at her wedding? That's not her. It's your day. So you do you.
Absolutely. Right? Happy wedding planning, y'all.
Happy wedding. Don't get too stressed. Hey, so thanks for listening to our podcast. If you found any of this information helpful and you know someone who may be engaged or is a maid of honor, maybe you could tell them and share it with a friend.
Absolutely. So screenshot this episode, share it on Instagram, on Facebook, and tag The Wedding Duo. We promise to share the love back. Also, if you are interested in more resources or the show notes, you can go to theweddingduo.co. We have one-on-one virtual sessions, a shop, all sorts of fun stuff. Check it out.